Steve again. We got the foot ferry coming in from Bremerton. We've got some sun out, there's some beautiful clouds out, and I'm just going to do a really quick video about ELMA cloning, or ELMA cell division. Cell division, sort of like mitosis, or whatever they call the division of cells into more than one organism when it separates, when it splits apart. And what we've essentially done is taken yachts and islands and other ELMAs, extreme lifestyle marketing assets, what we like to refer to as recruiting vessels, or recording vocals, because we're doing vocals that stimulate people's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins in their brain chemistry, and making them go, wee! I want to be on that vessel or vehicle. A recruiting vehicle is a recording vocal, is a recreational vehicle or vessel, and it can be an island, which is not a movable one. It can also be a very, very dangerous floating island, which is a yacht, especially a blue water yacht that can go anywhere on the planet, any time zone, any hemisphere, north, south, east, west, and with an antenna can be on the internet, broadcasting a lifestyle that makes people go, I want that, how much is it, I don't care, here's my money, and the money gets wired, and it's over. And that means that an 8-year-old girl can sell it, or a 90-year-old grandma can sell it, a 42-year-old ex-felon sleeping on their friend's couch surfing, as it were, can sell it also. And the idea of a vessel that divides into 3 pieces, and suddenly it's 3 vessels and not one in a few days, or even, well, not hours, because it takes a little time to process the paperwork of buying the next 2 of them so that it turns from 1 vessel into 3. But it happens really quickly, sort of while you were not looking, and you went out to dinner, or you went back to work a couple of days and didn't pay attention, and suddenly there's 2 more vessels. And they're in different places, and they're doing the same thing the first vessel did, and the project just got bigger, and not necessarily a lot more people, but just more powerful and more social proof. And what you're doing is you're building a momentum or a speed that money kind of follows speed. And if you have a static asset like a Ferrari or a fancy home, and then 6 months later you have the same Ferrari and the same home with the same message, it isn't the same as if you have a Ferrari day 1 and 2 days later you also have a Lamborghini, and 2 more days later you have a Bentley, and then the next day you buy a Porsche, and pretty soon you have a mountain hideaway, not just the big home, and you just bought a boat while no one was looking. And that's cell division, or extreme lifestyle marketing asset replication, or a warp drive engine that feeds on itself. And the marketing is not of this world, it's not of this planet, it's astonishingly fast, and it's powerful, and it gets people's attention because they're not used to seeing money being made like that ever in their life, or ever even heard of anybody doing this. And it's simply because of human brain chemistry. They want fun, they want adventure, they want to learn things that are not, I repeat, not of a marketing nature, even though we're going to show them how to use those skills and those assets and those exotic places that we go to as a means of marketing, even though you're not doing any. You're simply putting them on film. And a soundtrack, it's always about the soundtrack, because that is what makes people's brain chemicals go, hello, it's time to do this. I don't care what anybody says. I'm not waiting for my mother-in-law to sanction this little escapade. I'm not waiting for my financial planner to come back from Europe on vacation in a month, because I probably won't be able to afford it when they're back. I'm just going to pull the trigger. And we're looking for people who make decisions quickly based on logic, but also based on how it makes their brain chemicals make them feel about it. And they almost instinctively, because the croc brain is ancient, it's 5 million years or more old, and they know deep down in their being, in their DNA, that people they show this to are going to feel the same way, and they sign. And that is memetics, which is the art and science of how money-getting memes copy from one human to another with free video that rides the snake, which is the fiber optics at the bottom of the world's oceans that connect the continents and make Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and MySpace and Dig and Stumble and Foursquare and lots of other things free and fast. And when you get that formula right, well, you're going to walk on water, because if you get the price point right, that's why we call it whale memetics, which is the woman that's on the front end of the name William, in front of the, way at the very end of the line, man or male at the end of William. Then you have whale memetics, and that's whales hunting whales in order to make the actual whales, the Mysticeti, live a little bit longer, and maybe even Homer, Gomer, let's scare Jessica into church, sippy cup, also known as Homo sapien. It makes them maybe not go extinct, because if everything in the ocean fails and most of the forests and the rainforests and the biodiversity of the wildlife is compromised, well, then Homer Gomer isn't going to be around very much longer. And he is not very good at this economics thing where there's this thing called scarcity, and the resources are kind of in short supply and we're running out of them, and we probably don't have 500 million years of resources left for 7.1 billion tons of stupid, also known as sheeple. And if we continue on that path, well, we're sort of not going to be here anymore. We're kind of history, which we used to use when we were just a figment of your imagination. That would be, we're in the past, we're no longer in the future, and now Homer's not here anymore. Aw, poor Homer. He didn't make it through the, what's it called? I think it's the eye of the needle. He didn't make it through the eye of the needle of the great sweepstakes, where a sentient, or in this case, a sentient in training, we're a whole bunch of ways from being actually sentient, a sense of self creature that knows what the heck is going on with our planet and the Earth's web of life and the living systems and why we do the crazy things that we do. We're a long way. We're not even through the first trimester, not even close. Well, most of the time Homer just doesn't make it through that wormhole, otherwise known as the eye of the needle or the camel, and we're sort of fat, kind of. It's really hard for us to squeeze through that wormhole when we don't move, and we don't think very much, and we don't write very much, and we don't know logic. We're much more Dr. Spock, pin the left arm and look for the steering board on the right side of the boat, even though the rudder is now down in the center below the hull instead of on the right side where it used to break off if you parked the boat on the right side instead of the larboard side or the larboard or the Bin Laden, used to be bill of lading, Osama side, also known as larboard, also known as port. And that's not a good thing. We actually want to think Mr. Spock, which is logic, which barely even gets an eyebrow out of Leonard Nimoy in that role. And it's just a difficult process to get to the point where you understand your world better and you throw out all of these antique worldviews that have been clogging things up for 8,500 years, or 8.5 millennia. If you look at the three relatively famous, maybe more so than most of his films, Fellini, crazy films, 8.5, Roma, and Satyricon, and you pick out 8.5 and you see how nutty that one is, or as they say in the UK, nutter. A nutter film, well, that's how long we've been farming, about 8.5 millennia. And once you get farming, you get rules, and you get tools, and you get weapons, and you get testosterone, and you get churches, and you get trouble, and you get lines in the sand. Peter Gabriel, J'y sans frontiere, not very different from the line in the sand that's the dinosaur line, the Paleogene, also known as Peter Gabriel, the Paleogene line in the sand, which is now, used to be called the Kitsap Transit, where Kitsap's where Dianetic Scientology started. Poor torture. Poor torture. Oh, poor torture. Ended up producing Dianetics and Scientology. KT boundary, which is the Cretaceous Tertiary, now known as Peter Gabriel boundary, or Paleogene, which is the 70 million year old line in the sand that we're still trying to figure out, especially Ken Ham and his Grecian mythologists. So that's what we're doing here. It's kind of big and it's kind of exclusionary. It excludes people who have these ancient worldviews, and I don't mean pagan, and I don't mean Celtic, and I don't mean Druid. Those are female, and those are nature, and those are, well, we know there's this sun, and that's important, and this moon, that's tides, that's important, and the rest of this stuff is wacko, mostly. So the old ones, which aren't old, they're just immortal, that's all we all are, is immortal, kind of had it right, and we kind of went off the rails when we started farming, which is probably what happens every time some being somewhere in the multiverse ends up farming and ends up with all this stuff that happens once you start farming. Paternalism and so forth.